build HubSpot websites. How you doing, Anton?
Doing great. How about you?
I'm doing wonderful. It's been too long, man. I've missed you.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
true.
I get excited when we get to talk about HubSpot websites and
Yeah,
HubSpot CMS specifically every week. So I look forward to getting back in that group with you.
yeah. It's been a few weeks, yeah.
Yeah, and a few weeks, after inbound, we were both there. So I was thinking today we just get to focus on, obviously we got to say something about AI if we're doing our job as HubSpot, thought
Yeah.
leaders. But today we can focus on how it relates to, websites and CMS and maybe what people can be thinking about. Um, but first, as you were at inbound and you're seeing these two kinds of pushes that we
Yeah.
saw, well, really three, all impact the value of
Hmm.
a HubSpot website, or can, and that is like this data, the CRM component, and making sure we have all the data in the system and what we can do with that. Then we have the marketing and content hub, focus that is kind of like a renewed marketing campaign for the marketing
Yeah.
hub, from HubSpot and all the cool things you can do there now. But then, of course,
Yeah.
Breeze AI, uh, kind of a repackaging of Chat Spot, and you know, especially when making content, when making web pages, landing pages, uh, blogs, anywhere we are putting text in content, we are seeing these abilities to rewrite and utilize AI. Now we have that all under, related to Copilot. So I think it was awesome to see that brought
Yeah.
together. But as you were there and you were talking to people, but also hearing these things for the first time, not even related to website, but just you as somebody who's been around the ecosystem for a little bit,
Hmm.
been active
Yeah.
in the community, what was your kind of response or feelings that were generated as you heard all this new stuff happening?
I mean, to be honest, it was a bit overwhelming because it was like everything put on into a few minutes, basically. Okay, a few days, but I think you get the point. So, I mean, it was so much and it was quite hard to keep up with everything. But in general, great updates, and let's see what the future holds.
Yeah, and so in regards to your passion and why we're here, like the
Yeah.
HubSpot websites, what do you think? Like, if we relate it to that, like, what was the most, uh, let's say, most impactful stuff for you as you like heard things at inbound, saw these news tools that you knew you were going to come back home
Hmm.
and start trying to understand that, immediately.
Uh, so, I mean, from a developer's perspective, it's not so much right now. But if I put myself into the shoes of a marketer or a content creator or somebody who uses HubSpot to build landing pages, emails, any kind of assets, it's amazing, I would say, right? Because with Copilot, with Breeze, you just basically have the ability to prompt everything that you need, right? And of course, there's still a demand for content creators, for designers. I mean, I'm a designer myself, so I have to say it like that. But mm, AI, Copilot, Breeze will help people and companies to decrease the amount of time that is needed to put something live, right?
Yeah, and even iterate on, like, what you have. already. So, but I want to dig in there because I think you have a point, and that's where a lot of us are saying, okay, this is great. This is all new stuff. But if we don't get the
Mm,
basics right, you're not going to be able to leverage it. And I think that's some of what, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, when you say as a developer,
mm.
not much is changing. Can you like dig into why that is?
I mean, my in my opinion, it's like um, it's very so. I would say HubSpot is obviously a marketing sales service tool, obviously, right? So the HubSpot developers mm, use different tools right now in terms of AI, if they use it, which is absolutely not bad, right? Uh, and I mean, it's there's still a demand for developers, designers, like the other mm, people that are not marketers or sales service. Mm, and yeah, I mean, it's I mean, I could not imagine something like or a workflow for myself. Like, hey, I'm opening, let's say, the design manager because everybody is from knows this term, and instead of the usual layout, I would just see something like a text input field, and I would need to prompt the code, right? I mean, this is a something that just came to my mind, but it wouldn't be the same for the developers, right? Because I would say developers need their um yeah, like their own tools, and they're using AI specifically for dev tools. I mean, there are a lot of different AI specifically for developers. So
Okay.
yeah,
Well, we'll share a screen. I'll share my screen in a
yeah.
second. We can get into some of these, but I think it'll be important. It's important for all of the coaches and consultants out there, like as HubSpot makes it so easy to do things that, in this case, non-developers. I've heard lots of stories, with Hub Helper Harry, or just GPT in general, where
Mhm.
it's like, hey, this is the code that I have.
Yeah.
Like, I want it to do this. Like, can you make it do this? And even from a troubleshooting perspective, like it can help you do that. So I think
Yeah.
at the very least, anybody who's developing out there or a developer understand that you might run into some situations now where that has been done. The human on the other side got a little crazy,
Mhm.
and created some stuff. And this is where like the building blocks and the language that is used to put together the website is still of utmost importance. And if you don't have access to somebody who clearly understands that language, why it was put together that way, for your website, it's going to be a hard time trial and erroring your way, back to where you need to be. So I think both
Mhm.
sides understanding that, like you say, like we still need people that can speak the
Yeah.
language as it relates to our business and to how we use HubSpot and how we use our website, to support the business.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think being aware of the mechanisms that people can now use to create,
Hmm.
more. And I'm just going to share a couple as I pull up this website, because even I'm like, no matter how much I love to talk about HubSpot every day, like nobody can really keep up with everything that's available all the time. So I think it's a constant, not necessarily struggle, but constant effort to make sure it's not all on ourselves, right? It's where,
Yeah.
like, even just talking to Anton today, you know, helps me round out my knowledge set of what's available to us. So I'm just gonna go through a couple things here, right? And this is a page that I have built, in the website, in my website on HubSpot CMS. Again, I have Enterprise Hub, but I'm gonna just go into the the edit page here, because we have like a couple of the changes that I'll highlight are, one, like we have the sidebar that just collaborate with Copilot like right away, right?
Hmm.
So instead of you know maybe focusing on trying to find, like, and I'm just gonna test stuff. Let's say start a new chat, right? Seeing this prompt, right? Coming in here and just clicking translate the following text, uh, and so let's say from English to German, and I'm gonna come in here and I think I can just let's copy this and insert text and hit enter. All right, how'd we do, Anton? Is that a good translation?
Um, I mean, the translation is not bad at all. So it's, I mean, if you want to do it real quick, it's a super result. So therefore, I mean, you've just showed the how easy and how fast Copilot is and or Breeze. Um, so therefore, I mean, it's an incredible tool for, let's call it, help, right?
Right.
Because I mean, you've just translated something from English to German. Uh, so basically, you could create a German version of your whole website in, let's say, a day, right? Before
Yep.
the whole AI Copilot updates, I would say the typical workflow looked like that you had your text or your content in one language, you would need some translators, content creators like real writers, and then hand it over maybe in a spreadsheet, in a CSV, something like that, work from there, wait a few days or weeks, like this shortens the amount incredibly, right? And this is great.
Oh, this is funny. Like,
Hmm.
but it's an example of, like, okay, so I didn't
Yeah.
give it enough information. I just said translate it. I didn't say
Mhm.
into what. right? So looks like
Spanish it
probably
is.
giving me Spanish, which is a fair
Yeah.
guess. Like again, like that's probably the most
Yeah.
second one of the most common options, right? So
Yeah.
say actually I meant let's say translate into German. And I'm really just seeing if uh it does not give me the exact same
No.
translation. But notice how like this is where really like the only way anybody can get comfortable with these tools. Like
Mm.
we could like Anton and I could sit here and give you how to's like on all these things, right? We could create
Yeah.
tutorials. We probably will create some courses and tutorials. But the difference between like what I just did, where up here, but this is something super cool. Like, so before I had this highlighted in this sidebar, which is where the real editing happens in this case. Like in some HubSpot tools, especially the native tool set, you can edit right on the page, right? Right in the rich text. And if this module was set up to do that, I would have a replace button. But when we started, I only had a refine button because I did not have the actual editable place. See how this just changed to insert instead of replace?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now I'm finding that wild. The fact that so it's
Definitely.
literally like it's like we have Anton, just not Anton. We're not
Yeah.
trying to replace Anton here. So don't
No.
get me wrong. But the fact is Anton can't be everywhere at once. And we want to try and empower you to build websites, to maintain websites in a productive, like risk-free, effective manner, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just the ability to say like use this sidebar as an assistant, right? But a lot of the learning curve, just like a lot of CMS tools, right, is you have to get in and know where when it's a module versus a section, when I'm editing here versus editing over in the sidebar, right?
Yeah.
That is mattering here, right? Because now I can click replace and it brings it into here, right? Now, of course, our trusty friend, hopefully Control Z, yep, brings us uh, back to English. And this is just scratching the surface,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Also, something that I think is related to the result that you got into in terms of German translation. I would say it's all comes down to what did you prompt, right? Because
Yeah.
before that, you had the prompt, I mean, generated or um, suggested a bit different. So the structure of the prompt, like translate the following text from language A to language B, and here's the text,
Yeah.
might be responsible for the outcome, right? Because in the second one, it was like, yeah, translate this text to German, right? So, I mean, obviously, AI recognizes it like, hey, this is English, okay, and it runs through a translator. But
I also like since
yeah,
I didn't give it proper instructions, it went to Spanish first.
yeah,
And here, like it's possible that it it's translating from the Spanish now instead of the English, right? This is where you know, like Anton says, the prompt is so important.
yeah,
It'd be just like a human being. Like if I were, let's say I knew all these languages and you came to me and said, all right, take this English stuff and go right to German, right?
yeah.
versus take this English, take it to Spanish, right?
Mm.
Now I'm in a different context, right? And I'm trying to
Yeah.
localize it at the same time, probably if I'm a good translator. And then I come back and say, "Oh, actually like we need German too." Right?
Hmm.
Now I've done the work to do the Spanish and I'm whether I want to or not, I'm considering
Yeah.
that translation as I translate into German. So even though I'm going to go from English to German, I have new variables, new things to think about because I did the Spanish translation first, and that could
Hmm.
change, that
Yeah.
German outcome. So it's just like again, it's just like we would have anybody right next to us at the desk. If the instructions are bad, you're going to get,
Hmm.
bad work done or incomplete work.
I
Uh
mean, it could also be interesting if you prompted, or if you just prompt something like translate the initial text to German, right? Because this could also lead to the same result as the first answer, or maybe something different. And this is something that you've just said, like prompted, like you would say it to somebody who's sitting right next to you, right? Because this is something that I've encountered just recently with GPT. Mm, and I was playing around with a bit with something, and it provided me some text, and I was like, okay, this is obviously not that result that I'm expecting. So um and then I was like, okay, and now take the initial or the first thing that I fed you and go from there. And the result was much better, right?
yeah.
So
You can hear, like, as I do that a third time, I'm getting a slightly different. It's closer to the initial one, but still slightly different, right?
yeah,
So that's just one. Like, now let's look at the other end of the spectrum. Because I do think, like, and that's where, like, if you let these tools kind of guide you a little bit on what's available, like, I was not planning on doing a translation example, but when Copilot opens on a web page, right? Um, uh, like, uh, and depending on where it opens in HubSpot, it's suggesting prompts, right? Since I'm on a web page, one of the most common uses right now is for translation. Um, and I
yeah,
wasn't thinking about it, but translation is also one of the places where companies, as they're growing, there's a barrier there. They know they have to serve international clients and customers, and they can't wrap their minds around how much work that actually
mm,
requires in terms of it's not just going into Google and translating things. It is
yeah,
localization, right? It's creating content for that market, right?
yeah,
So that's when it doesn't get done. Our website only exists in English, right? And now
yeah,
this is an opportunity to really do those things we haven't been doing before anyways and
mm,
start to make progress. Again, none of these
yeah,
situations are hit create and then paste outcome, right?
definitely. I mean, something that I think should be also brought to the table is Breeze Copilot is in HubSpot, right? So it's a HubSpot feature. And if you think about other CMS, just let's say WordPress, right? You don't have Copilot and Breeze in WordPress. So you have two options. A, you use you will use some sort of plug-in. Maybe, I mean, I know there are services out there that will auto translate everything on your page. This is also a topic. And the third option would be do it or let it be translated by a person, right? So this is also a big benefit of HubSpot because it's so easy and so fast, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And
And even here, like
yeah.
the option, this is why I'm just trying everybody, like click on these Copilot buttons, like
Hmm.
start understanding. You don't have to understand everything it does. You can just ask Copilot to say, like, how do I, right? If I say, like, how do I use, how do I use, uh, let's say, Copilot to help build my website? Right. And this is where it
Hmm.
goes beyond just content and all these things.
Yeah.
Like, so I can assist you with various tasks related to HubSpot that can support your website development. You can ask me questions about using HubSpot, generate content, or even create tasks or notes to help organize your project.
Hmm. Yeah.
If you need help with specific aspects like generating a workflow for your website, forms, or summarizing content ideas, just let me know. Right. So all these things, like, it's easy for marketers especially to just focus on the content and creating more and more and more,
Yeah.
but all these little things that often get in the way, you think about approval
Hmm.
processes and notifying other people that things are done, like
Hmm.
helping you refine your process as it relates to building websites. I'm sure like Copilot
Yeah.
can play a huge role. And again,
Hmm.
like, I'm not the best project manager, right? So relying on something or someone else to stay organized and keep the project on track, forward movement, right, is really important to getting these things, done and avoiding scope creep and things like that. So this is really cool to see.
Yeah. And I mean, we are currently looking only in the, I would say, page builder copilot, right? So there's a ton of features if you leave the page builder and open copilot only in the regular HubSpot, I would say, because then you can do basically everything, like summarizing clients or companies' contacts, CRM data. Um, I mean, you've also mentioned project management. It's extremely um,
Yeah.
useful.
And that's where, like, even
Yeah.
here, so uh there's lots of things, like, we build out
Hmm.
ICPs, and as we're building the page, like, starting to ask questions about ICPs that we've defined in HubSpot. Like, maybe,
Hmm.
the boss asked, like, oh, we need to create a page just for this specific kind of person, and you can pull up data to say, like, oh, we only actually have one of those contacts out of 20,000, like,
Yeah.
in our portal. Should we actually do that? Or maybe that means there's an opportunity, to reach more. This is where putting this right next to the CRM data, you know
Hmm.
should
Yeah.
cut down on a lot of the back and forth that you often have to say, like, no, let's look at the data. It might support what we're doing, it might not, um, but let's just consider it. At least if we're not considering it, then why do we care about it in the first place?
Yeah.
So I wanted to show, like, the other side. Like, so this is very simple, like one paragraph, did some translations, right? If you
Hmm.
go to file here, right? Remix content. So this is the page itself. As I click on this, and this is where, like, once you start to understand these tool sets, right, and what's available to you, understanding what to build first and when and how. Like, if we do the work, let's say to create this page uh, first, and we've gone through, we've gotten help from Copilot, we've gotten help from Anton to build just the right module, for us. Now we do that first, and we did the work, and now it's like, okay, now we gotta distribute it somehow, right? And now it's another back and forth. Let's meet for another hour so that we can knock out the email, so that we can understand the social posts, or let's transfer it to this other team, and now we got to bring them all up to speed. It's just all these things process wise get in the way. And instead, what we can do is I can say, all right, I want an email, I want social, uh, let's make a blog post. Let's do a landing page. This is our website page. Let's maybe, try to drive some of that traffic to a landing page where the form is front and center. We're trying to convert some people. And let's go ahead and create an image. If I had Marketing Hub Enterprise, I think I could create an SMS too. And let's click next. And again, we're here and understanding, like, so much of the value of HubSpot is understanding that just because you click the button doesn't mean you can't change what has happened, right?
Yeah.
The system is built to help you iterate, to learn, to discover what's possible, and then apply what's possible, right? So I could very easily say, maybe I haven't seen content remix before, I haven't looked it up. I was like, oh, it just did this. I didn't give it any context at all. I didn't give it any prompts. So it just created some stuff. All right, let's look at what it created, based
Yeah.
on that. All right, and let's see if I can. Right, so it's an email. It's not any kind of, design. It's just language at this point. And I could read through it and say, actually, a quick read through is actually pretty damn good. But this is the moment where it's like, okay, this is a general version. Maybe I actually wanted, I had an ICP in mind, right? And I want these all to be for that ICP,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Click on show attributes over here. And if we look at, let's say, the blog post, right? Now I can add additional prompting here and say, like, I need an informative post that communicates to order management departments, right? And I can even say, like, short, medium, long. Let's go shorter. Right? I can include generated image. And then I'm just gonna, it's got these, this is where, like, maybe I don't pick 5 things if I'm only focused on building one thing. But let's do landing page here. Say,
I mean, something that I think is worth mentioning is that you don't have to select 5 things in the first place, right? So you can
yeah,
first create a landing page from this thing or make it or finish it, and then come back, create an email, do this, then come back, create a blog post, and so on, right? So this could help, right? And
Yeah.
but
And
if
and
everything
so
is in one place, yeah.
yeah. And so I also made it easy for me to get rid of the problem
Mm,
child there. Like I just
yeah.
clicked trash and got rid of the social post, and now I can generate content.
Yeah.
And again, that social post wasn't available.
Mm,
This is where there's still a learning curve about what's happening in Marketing Hub versus what's happening in Content Hub. And, since I don't have a higher level Marketing Hub subscription, the social posting tools aren't available to me. So that's why it was erroring out. If I click generate content now, right, it's going to change this first level. So I do suggest, like, it can be very informative to understand what AI outputs when you don't give it any instructions at all. Sometimes it can be very good, sometimes it's way off, right? And when it's way off, it's not dissimilar from thinking like, oh, I just sent the email to Anton and I asked him to do something for me, and what he did for me was not what I expected at all. And you go back and you look at the thread and it's like, oh, I forgot this important piece of instruction, or I added like 10 instructions that made it very confusing, for me to follow, for Anton to follow what I was trying to do. Right. Same thing applies here, where as you review like the result and say, okay, that's not quite what I want. Sometimes I've seen this already highlight, it speaks to maybe your website page, maybe the source material is not
yeah.
saying what you want it to say. Like if the AI can't understand it, it's very unlikely that a human's going to be able to understand it, right?
Very true. Yeah.
So now um we have cool stuff like images, right? That's kind of portal like, right? uh and I think the cool part, again, like doing this inside of HubSpot,
Mm-hmm.
now I can click this button, save in file manager. Now it's in the system, takes me to the file manager, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm in the landing page, right? So it's going to need a little more help. Oh, no. So I just click in, right? How does the portal improve efficiency? Wow. Even creates an FAQ section
This
here,
is nice.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But now the truly cool thing, and this is where you can, obviously I've got to manage the logo there. Um, and this is where, again, we're trying to do next level things inside of places that aren't meant to be the final point of editing, right? So inside of these sidebars, and like it's possible that it doesn't look like this, like in the real
Yeah.
tool or when you do the real preview. So that's where the cool piece, because we could go to GPT and we could say, oh, I need text for a landing page, right? And then I grab that text from GPT and I bring it over into HubSpot, right? Since I'm doing this inside of HubSpot, I can just go save, and it brings me right to, the page builder.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, I did not pick the best template as an example, but this is where now I can actually finish it, very
Mm-hmm.
quickly. And these points in the process where, maybe one team is, or somebody is focused on doing this part, making sure it's good, right? And then you transfer it to transfer it to another team or to get somebody else's view, you might not bring them into Remix. Like you bring it over here, you comment and say, hey, Anton, you know, this is what the output of Remix gave me. You know, what do you think? I think it's close, needs this and this and this. And you
Mhm.
start working on it in the place that it's meant to be, you know, managed and iterated on, right? And that's powerful. Like there's so much, there's so many gaps in our project processes where that transition and that handoff between
Mhm.
people, you know, is where things go wrong. The fact that we can just take the output, put it right in the tool that's made to finish it is very, very powerful. Have you had much time to play with Remix yet, Anton?
I mean, I had, let's say, a developer view on it. So there are things in the work for specifically developers. Mm, but to be honest, I hadn't had much time to work with remakes because I don't have enterprise. And currently, the clients I'm working with also don't have enterprise. So there is no real world scenario, I would say.
Well,
But
Remix
obviously,
is is available at the pro level.
oh,
Um,
really?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well,
But I will say, like, I'm glad you highlighted the developer perspective
yeah.
because, like, when I was choosing from templates, right? And this is where at least understanding, uh, you know, in a common place we get to in businesses, we want to be able to control things that relate to the users we're supporting. And
Mm,
as a developer, if you don't know that I have access to these tools, right? And then you don't manage the naming conventions well, the things you're building for me, or you know, they're confusing or they're not like contextual. When I go to pull it up in this new area of HubSpot, it can be a lot of places, right?
mhm,
Like naming conventions. And even though I didn't give you a heads up that I was going to use this tool and I was going to start using it in this way, because it's hard for me to pick the right one, I'm going to associate that with the person who created that thing or named that thing, right? And that's where, like, unintentionally we cause some friction in the experience. And you know, so that's where understanding the tool set, that's the double-edged sword of deciding to do this in HubSpot, is when you develop new websites based on information outside and experiences outside of HubSpot, and you don't understand the entire tool set of HubSpot, you will run into challenges like that.
mhm.
And it can be
Yeah.
very easy. It is very easy to tell if somebody's used to developing websites in HubSpot or not. And there's things
Mhm.
like that. There's little things like that come up,
Yeah.
you know, a lot, because we also see landing pages named on contact records when people convert on forms, and making sure that that's all clear, like everywhere it shows up in HubSpot, is
Yeah.
super important.
Yeah, definitely. So it's a it makes a huge difference if you work with a developer, or maybe you are a developer, or you don't have access to a developer, or you are not a developer and just using the tools that you have available. Mm, which is definitely not a bad thing. Don't get me wrong, right? So you don't have to be a developer uh, to use HubSpot. This is definitely not the case. Mm, but yeah,
You will get
it's
you will get more out of it when you work with
Yeah.
developers in various places. And this is not just for CMS, because not everybody has their websites in HubSpot,
Mm.
but just this underlying understanding of the infrastructure, that you're working in. It can be challenging to understand it all, and that's not what we're recommending at all. It's kind of say, hey, I see all these use cases. Like,
Mm.
it doesn't look like they're available to me. Um, there's a great
Yeah.
developer community available, uh, where you can get questions answered and talk to, get connected, with people like Anton. There's a great, monthly developer, HubSpot user group. There's these places where you can at least be aware. That's all we're asking. Just being aware on both sides, whether you're a developer or a user wanting to do cool things in HubSpot. Just be
Yeah.
aware of what's available. That's the first step, and then educate each other, right? Like, this is a classic case. Like, I'm not a developer, I'm not a coder. It can be very easy to assume that the technical minds, the engineers, the software people have somehow like kept up faster, right? Just because they're smarter, or, they're always in it every day. But just like, I'm working with manufacturing customers. I know those use cases. I don't know all of the SaaS use cases. I don't know all of the other areas of HubSpot that I might not be interacting in every day.
Mm.
Uh, so that's where rounding out kind of your resources, a developer, has to be one of them. Just has to be, if you want to get the most out of HubSpot, right?
Yeah.
Which you should, right? And that's what we're here to do.
Yeah.
And so I look forward to continuing, the series with you, Anton. We'll get back to some more, show and tell. Again, it's like, kind of, where do we start? It's we have a uh, an embarrassment of resources at our fingertips.
Yeah.
We'll count on you to help us understand, where to start and how to move forward on this journey of building a website.
Sounds great. Yeah. So same time next week.
Same time next week, and until then, you know,
Sounds good.
think about your websites, think about the content you maybe haven't gotten to yet. Maybe you want to translate. Just start clicking on the Copilot, get comfortable with it. It's the only way you're going to learn these tools. Um, find those opportunities and let's
Hmm.
grow. Have a great day,
Yeah.
everybody.
Have a great one.